But first, my interview with Mikie Sherill, Democratic Congresswoman from New Jersey's 11th Congressional District. Congresswoman, thanks so much for doing this, as always, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you, and thanks for having me.
You have been projected as the winner. The vote's not certified until, well, we're taping this on Thursday, until tomorrow. Your opponent has not conceded, and now there is a news report out that she has sent a letter to the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey's office, Rosemary Becky, alleging a lot of wrongdoing in the election, especially in Essex County. Do you have a reaction?
Well, I thought a lot of it was, seemed like some unsubstantiated claims. Some of it seemed frivolous, like someone had a coat at the polling place, or that some of the poll workers were rude, which is, you would hope they would not be, but not a crime. And then there was even a claim that they weren't asking for IDs, which in New Jersey, you generally don't have to, because most of us sign up and are registered at the DMV and provide the identification there. So I was really disappointed, because to me, it seemed sort of like the attacks we see from the president, just really more than anything trying to sow doubt and create confusion. And when it comes to our democratic elections, I think that's inappropriate.
Many of freshman moderate Democrats did not win their elections. As a matter of fact, Democrats were expected to pick up seats in this election. As of this airing, the Republicans have gained 8 seats. It might be as high as 11 or 12 by the time it's all over. Do you have an idea of what went wrong for the Democrats in the House?
Well, I certainly think we need to find out. I'm a former Navy helicopter pilot, and if we ever had an aircraft mishap, we had an aircraft mishap board. And it wasn't to assign blame, but rather to really delve into what happened, why it happened, and how we could prevent it in the future. Was it pilot error? Was it mechanical error? Were the maintainers doing something incorrect? Just to make sure that type of thing never happens. So I hope as a party, as we get these returns in and get a better idea of what happened across the country, we can figure out why that is.
There was a conference call recently that was a post-mortem on the election that made some of the audio was leaked out, and it made news. And it's the takeaway seemed to be in the media that there is a split now between progressives and moderates in the Democratic Party, and that might lead to problems. Do you feel that way?
I feel that there are so many things we agree on throughout the caucus. And these are people from the, one side of the caucus all the way to the other side, and everyone in between. We all believe we have to get everyone covered in this country with health care. We believe we have to drive down prescription drug costs. We want to make sure we're addressing the wage gap in this country. We want to address infrastructure. And sometimes that's a little different across the country. I really am focused on the Gateway Tunnel project, but we have people who want to address water infrastructure and broadband internet. So many of us agree across the caucus. We just have to come together and make sure we're working really hard, because in divided government like this, you have to find ways through the Senate. You have to find ways to get your bill onto the president's desk. It's going to be a little better for us in this cycle, because once we get it to the president's desk, hopefully we should get that signed by Joe Biden. But I've got high hopes for Georgia, but unless and until we get those 2 seats, we've really got to get these bills through the Senate.
Yeah, you just said something that perked up the ears of a lot of people in New Jersey when you said, I hope we get the funding for the Gateway project. It's been promised for so long. What do you believe that's a good chance under a Biden administration?
I know that is something, well, I'll remind your viewers that for years, Joe Biden was called Amtrak Joe, because he took the train every day back and forth from Delaware to Washington. So yes, I believe he will be very focused on the Gateway Tunnel project. It's so critical to the Northeast Corridor. He's so familiar with the Northeast Corridor. So I think he'll be a great champion of it.
You pointed out that you served in the armed forces and you're on the Armed Services Committee. President Trump recently has announced a troop withdrawal of hundreds of troops, sometimes thousands of troops from Iraq and Afghanistan and Somalia. What is your reaction to that?
It's been so difficult with this administration and this presidency because there are things that so many of us want to get done. I would say most of your post 9/11 veterans desperately want to get our troops out of Iraq and Afghanistan. We really want to bring these generational or forever wars to an end. We have sons and daughters fighting in the war that their moms and dads fought in already. So we really have to bring these wars to a close. And yet the way this administration goes about these things is so disruptive, so chaotic, and tends to lead to far worse results and a far worse position globally than we were at the start. So, for example, when the president said and sort of announced unilaterally that he was pulling troops out of Syria, our allies, the Kurds, who have done much of the fighting in that region for us and for themselves, were unaware of this plan. Turkey decided to start moving forward with their plans to invade. I know Russia took advantage of that situation as well. And at the end of the day, we actually didn't cut down the troop numbers in a way that the president had promised, and yet created a more chaotic situation in Syria. And I'm afraid we're going to see some of the same results if the president precipitously pulls out troops without the negotiations with our allies, without the negotiations with the Taliban. I'm afraid we're going to see some bad results in the areas.
I want to switch topics for a second to telehealth. We've all learned about telehealth and talking to our doctors virtually through the pandemic. And I think most people that have done it, I just did it recently, like it and want it to continue past the pandemic. You just introduced a bill on telehealth. Tell us about it.
Well, I introduced a bipartisan bill with Kevin Hern from Oklahoma to see that it does just that we continue to be able to utilize telehealth and the exemptions we've had past the end of the pandemic. Like you, I've used it. I found it incredibly convenient. I'm a mom, and I remember taking half a day off work to take my kids to the pediatrician because of the times that they had open. I know people with mobility problems have found it so useful. And then we have people who have health care issues that require a lot of appointments. And to be able to do some of those appointments online has been so incredibly helpful. So we're working hard to expand access and make sure that we're able to keep that in place well past the pandemic.
Congresswoman, thanks again for speaking with us. You've always been gracious with your time, and we appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and have a great Thanksgiving.
New Jersey Democratic Congresswoman Mikie Sherill. Still to come, the Director of Communicable Diseases for the New Jersey Health Department explains why it's difficult to keep track of COVID-19 test results in New Jersey. That's next.